today we'll finally learn about some really big Python thing. We're learning a lot of really big Python things today, and it's called a class. So you might think that you've never worked with any of this weird syntax before, but actually you have been working with classes for a very long time. You've been working with classes when you did this. Color equals green and yellow. And then you would do color equals color.split. This is actually a class, and you might see one difference between classes and functions. In a function, like I could make a function, let's say I have a function called greener, and you might not see it here, or no, let me give a better function. Let's just do the function string. Even though this is already a string, I'm going to be putting color. Okay, so good. This is a function. Alright, this function makes a color a string, which it already is. So not such a good example, but still, it's a function and it does stuff. Okay, this is a class. In here, a class is being acted. And that's because you can see here that we're getting some color, okay? So let me give it a better name, color or RGB. So RGB is equal to color.split, okay? So we're taking the object color or this color. So we're taking this specific object, this specific type, and we're splitting it. Now, you might not get what I mean, but let's say color was, let me just run this for a second. Let me shape it. Okay, so let's go here, go to Python, green and yellow. Now, this is a specific type, and this function, which is actually called a method, works on this specific type. This type is a string. So if I try 1 to 3, 1 to 3 doesn't have a function split. The type 1 to 3, this type doesn't have inside of it the enable function split. And you'll see that an int object, so this int class, has no attribute split. But a string class does have an attribute split. And does a Boolean class have it? No. So these classes, these like objects, like true, false, Boolean, string, they're basically really classes. And these classes are like, you can think of type. So like, if I'm trying to write a class for string, I would say class string, and there. Or yeah, like this. So this is class string, and the class string, let's say that this is like really in the core of Python. So class string is has a function called split, and you can see it right here, and it removes the space of the class string. The end. That is basically a class. So I have this function, I have this whole thing, so that you guys can understand class better, and I like to use streetlights as an example. So let me go back to this part. So let's talk about streetlights. This is a really odd topic to talk about, but streetlights, basically, they, at the start, when you create a streetlight, they're not working yet. You need to do some wiring and stuff, okay? So when you first create a streetlight, they're not working. They'll just show everything black. So every color is black. Okay, when we finally do create the streetlight, it will now be working. And when we change the streetlight's color, it will still be working, but it'll also have a color. So let's think about the variables we need for this. We need a status, and we need a color. And before the color is defined, you can just say the color. Before the color is like really put in, you can just say the color is not defined. So status, we need, and a color. Okay, so basically, now let's go to class streetlights. And before we do this, we always need a constructor, which looks like this, double underscores in it. double underscores, and it will have a self object. And if you look at all these functions that I have, you will see they all contain self, because any function in a class just needs to contain self. Also, you could define a variable like this. So self.status, self.color, and you can think of the selves as like basically the types. So street lights color, street lights status, street lights constructor, and this is called the constructor. Street light method, and we call if you remembered, we call these functions for classes, we call methods. So let's go through this step by step. So first we can create a constructor, which has to be there no matter what. You cannot have a constructor. And in this constructor we have self.status equals not working, so repeat defining it, and self.color equals not defined. And don't think this self is a parameter. Python will not say self is a parameter. If you see me calling this thing down here, it doesn't show that self is a parameter. So now def start self. So if you're going to use the start function, the status, the self.status, the streetlight status will now be working. And just like in functions, we can also return something in methods, so we can return true. Now we'll have this interesting function. It doesn't only take self, which like it's just predefined, it's not a parameter. It also takes another parameter. So this parameter you have to put in, and this parameter is, let's say, color. So if the self.status is not working, we can't put a color because it's not working. But if it is, else self.color is equal to color and return true. So as you can see, I have the program here, and what it does is that first it creates a streetlights object class, and to do that you just say whatever variable name you want. I think lights to do this the best is equal to now this object. And right now we don't really have anything with this object. When we do this, think of it as we're kind of creating the init. Okay? So when we do this, even though we're not calling it right now, we're creating it. And if you don't think I'm telling the truth, look at this. If you put light status, if we hadn't called the init, it wouldn't have been created then. So if we hadn't called the init, it wouldn't even be created. So now, sorry, the status is not working. And ignore all these other statuses. They're basically just the rest. Okay, so now you can see that when we call streetlights, we're actually calling it init. So you can say streetlights, but can you also say this? Think about it for a second and then ask, and then I'll tell you the answer. Okay, thought about it? Let's test it out. You can see invalid syntax. Okay, so yeah, that's the common mistake people do. Dots. Now do you think it'll work? Now. Dun 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 dun. It doesn't work, because if we call this function init, we're basically not taking the whole thing out of its whole. We might be creating this streetlight object, but if we call this function init on it, we'll just be giving out the return option of init. Init doesn't. When streetlights happen, it might call init. It does call init, but it also creates itself. If we just put in the init function, that won't create the string, so the class. So the class, when you call it, you create it. Not when you put the init function, you create it. Okay. Now that we got that clear, let's make it a little more complicated. So now I started it. And you can see I put this in statuses, and I put it one more line just for like clarity, style, and then I put a color. So easy peasy. But now let's put in something. If the color equals red, or color equals, oh sorry, I'm gonna type in blue, green, or finally color equals yellow. Yay, we can do this. Else, we also have to return false. That it didn't work, we're sorry, but it did. So now if we try it, I put in color green, it should be able to work. Let's see. Yes, but if I put in color blue, and we'll see that it doesn't work. Color is not defined still. Okay, so why was I telling you that? Well, if you look at this line, we didn't put self.color. So we don't really need to put self all the time, but things that we're using forever, we need to put self. Do you get what I mean? If I cut this line off, self.status wouldn't even be there from the start. So that's why we have this constructor here and these stuffs. Okay, so now that you got the general idea of classes, you can start off and build many more data types. You can build off tables, you can build off so many things, you can build linked lists. And just to show you how cool classes are, without a class, you wouldn't have been able to make this super cool data structure called linked list. And wait, sorry. So you wouldn't be able to create this. So classes are really helpful, and they even create big data structures like this one. And yes, so that's classes and brief introduction to it, and that's all. That's what you need so that you can make your own class, your own type. But wait, I'm going to be creating a new episode next about type and classes and how we'll get the full picture.